Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to talk about a very important part of a habitat plan and holding deer on your property, and that's screening. We're going to talk about the 5 options that are available to most people, and we're going to definitely cover these last 2 that we have here on the shelf at Northwoods. So let's talk about screening and the importance of screening. So the importance of screening is being able to hide your food plot, even just your hunting property, trying to get the deer to increase daytime activity. I've seen it personally. We took a large egg field horse pasture and put a screen around it and increased the daytime activity. The food plot went from, I believe it was 4 acres. We took that 20-acre field and shrunk it down to 4 acres, and we increased the daytime activity. By 3 hours before dark, we were having deer in that food plot, according to the cameras, and then personal observation. And when that screen was gone, that daytime activity dropped 90% to where the last few minutes of the day is when those deer would step out on that field. So it's very important to increase the daytime activity by making those deer feel secure, not being able to see out into fields, not being able to be seen from the road. Great way to end poaching and nosy neighbors. I know we've helped dozens and dozens of people every year solve poaching issues on their property with our products. Break up the food plots. Hide your cabin, hide your house. Prevent the neighbors from seeing into your food plots, shooting into your fields. There's a lot of reasons to screen your food plots in your hunting property. But we'll talk about those options that we have here on the shelf at Northwoods. But the fastest way to do it are these berms. All right, here's another berm we're looking at. This is on a property we're working on. You see the food plots out here. We just got done mowing for the spring before we start planting. But it was a narrow ditch that's about 8 feet deep, and that's shrunk. It's about 7 feet tall all along here, maybe 8. I don't know if you can hear the highway. Right behind that, about 30 yards on the other side of the tree line, is a pretty busy highway. But we're going to try to plant some trees. You can see there's Russian olive, autumn olive started down on that end. It'd be nice to get it all along here and increase this by 10 to 15 feet. But, deer come out here a lot earlier now. And, the food plot system goes out and it wraps around the corner there. And there's more opening back here and around the corner here. But this is the closest part to the highway. And when we had the cameras running, we had deer in here an hour and a half before dark. It's amazing how these deer grow up next to the highway, and I don't know if I can see it. There's cars going by, but it doesn't bother them at all. They just get used to it. So this is the fastest way to do a screen, but it's pretty expensive. They are fast to build, but they are expensive. I don't know what the going rate for excavators are nowadays. $200-300 an hour. I'm not sure, depending on where you are in the country. So that short berm that we were showing you on one of the properties we're working on is only, I think, about 60 yards long. It took a few hours, really good operator. But again, they're very expensive, but that's the absolute most permanent way to screen a property or a food plot. So that's one option. Number 2, I really like trees as a permanent perennial screen. This landowner did a great job. They have red pine on the backside for the, I would assume that would have been for the first few years because they grow the fastest, but then you start to lose their bottom leaves or their bottom limbs. And then they have balsams, 2 rows of balsams in front of that. Now, I've been driving by that field for 20 years, and I remember when those were 5 and 6 feet high, and I thought way back when I first saw them do it, I thought it's going to be a phenomenal screen in years to come. It's a great screen, but it is slow. And we could have used something like switchgrass or our HD screen for a few years to hide that. And I believe there's about a 30-acre field behind that screen of alfalfa. I'm not quite sure what else they have growing in there, but I do know that you can't see in there anymore, and they did a great job. And that's why those are the trees I really like. I like fir trees that have, balsams that have branches all the way to the ground. They are slow growers. I do believe that's why on the 3rd row there is red pine. which are quicker growers, but eventually they start to lose those bottom limbs and the effectiveness of the screen is gone. But for a permanent screen, not that expensive, but it just takes a long time to get there, 15, 18 years to get to 7 to 10 feet. I really like those Norways and those spruce. The ones I don't like, and we're going to take you out back and show you right now, I do not like hybrid popple for a screen. So here's a hybrid popple, and we'll back up and you can see the full effect. But this is the food plot. And yeah, they make a great screen right now with all the leaves on the trees. Okay, there's neighbor's house back there. There's our house there. And we planted these, I think, 15, 16 years ago. And there's maybe 20 yards, 25 yards of trees, and there's got to be 30 trees in there. And it looks great right now. But what do you think happens when all these leaves come down in October? Okay, they're got to be 40 feet tall. And that all started with the cutting. We did the black plastic thing. This is a horrible screen for hiding from a roadway if you're trying to hide your deer movement. Absolutely terrible screen because it's wide open when you need it. It looks cool right now, and it's amazing that these came from a little 2-foot cutting. I think some of them probably are tall enough to hide deer stands in now. But this is not something I would be screening a food plot with, because again, you look how the deer can eat the branches. They can browse right here. It's wide open when these when the leaves fall. Compare that to this. Okay, we threw 5 balsam trees here, and they're together. You cannot see through that. This is what you want if you're planting trees. This looks cool, but not when you need it the most. This is what you want right here if you're going to do trees. They do work right now, okay? But again, it's Memorial Weekend, and they're leafed out. Neighbors can't see our house. We can't see the neighbor's house, and they would make a good screen right now, okay? But nobody's poaching deer, May 28th. No one's shining your fields, and it's doesn't really make sense to use those, because what happens is in October, all those leaves come down. We can see the neighbors. We can see all the way past, clear across their pasture. They are a terrible choice for a screen. Okay, there's a time and a place for hybrid popples, maybe in bedding areas and stuff, and you keep hacking the tops off and create deer food. But those 50-foot tall popples right now, when they lose their leaves, folks, you can see right through it. It's just not my opinion. That's a fact. I would never ever plant a hybrid popple for a screen. If I had to, and that, I don't know, that's about 30 yards long, and I don't know, there's 25, 30 trees in there. You'd have to plant hundreds of trees to get a screen work, but then they're going to be this big, 8 to 10 feet tall, but eventually when they lose their leaves, you're still going to be able to see through them. So I do not like hardwood cuttings. The only cutting I would use for a screen, maybe a willow, the bushy type willows if it was wet ground and I couldn't plant like our HD screen, or I couldn't plant switchgrass or a balsam tree or a fir tree or something like that if it was standing water. And I've seen locations like that and I recommend it. Definitely wouldn't do dogwood because they eat it. I would do some sort of a willow, the bushy type willows, but you got to make sure you're going to get tall enough and thick enough, and that's probably your only option. But I don't like cuttings for screen, and the willow would be the only time I would recommend a screen. But again, you look at those hybrid popples, they're not going to hide anything when those leaves fall down. Another one we'll talk about briefly, I don't deal with it, I don't sell it as miscanthus. There's a lot of people that are for miscanthus. There's some people that are against miscanthus because it's non-native. They're talking about possibly eventually someday, like the Bradford pear, becoming invasive. I don't deal with it. I don't deal with it enough to really have an opinion on it either way. I know a lot of the deer managers that we work with hand in hand do some work in northern environments, and they have said that in those, the northern third of the country, extreme north, they have a hard time getting miscanthus to stay established because of the cold weather. It doesn't winter very well. I know in southern Michigan, some of our partners are using it down there, but south of that, I'm sure it's fine to use, but I don't mess with it. I don't deal with it. So it is an option, but I do not use it this far north. So the products I really want to talk about that we have on the shelf here, switchgrass and annual screens. Obviously, we've done a lot of videos on our switchgrass. We have the newest variety here with the Reap Canada line, RC Switchgrass. We've got RC Big Rock, which the more we deal with this, we're seeing that this is probably the most versatile switchgrass offered to habitat, wildlife, and whitetail land managers. We've got RC Big Rock established in Canada all the way to Georgia. I just saw a video from one of our customers in Georgia that's planted it, and it's 5 feet tall already in 2024 and doing quite well. Now this is northern Georgia. I've seen it grown as far east as New York. I've seen it as far west as western Iowa, into Kansas, and all places in between. That is probably the most versatile switchgrass there is. If you've got sandy soil, we've got RC Tecumseh, we've got RC Chippewa for kind of that in-between soil. 7 to 8, 9 feet tall, this RC Big Rock. I've seen the new variety that they're working on. It's like RC Big Rock 2.0. They're working on it, and we're hoping to have some of that seed next year, if not 2026. But it's a tall variety, and all the winter comparisons I've seen where they've done side-by-sides with a bunch of these varieties other folks are selling for switchgrass for whitetail lands, they're all flat on the ground with the snow and the RC Big Rock still standing. Now folks, again, understand this. This is a prairie grass. It's a native prairie grass. You're not planting steel rebar. You're not, this isn't a tree. This is native prairie grass. And if you get a massive ice and snowstorm, some of it may come down. But again, it's a grass. So we can't make promises that we can't keep. But of all the switchgrass you can plant, everything I've seen, even here in our backyard, the stuff that I've seen that's 1 and 2 years old, this takes snow very well, better than anything I've ever planted as far as switchgrass. So the fifth one I want to talk about, the fifth option for screening, is our favorite one here, our annual screens. Now we've got two options on the shelf here. We've got Egyptian wheat and we've got our HD food plot screen. Now I really don't recommend Egyptian wheat other than if you've got a wet area, wet ground, obviously not standing water. Our HD screen does not like wet ground. It doesn't like wet feet. It doesn't do very well. But if you've got a lower area that you can still plant, it's not standing water, Egyptian wheat I've seen grow to 6 to 7 feet tall. You will still get a screen. Our HD screen does not like wet ground. The other place I would recommend Egyptian wheat, not really recommend it. I mean, I'd rather see you plant our HD screen. I think it's a much better product. I know it's a much better product. But a lot of our customers down south still have used Egyptian wheat for years. They still want to buy Egyptian wheat, so we still ship a lot of it down to the southern states. But I keep telling them I think this HD screen is a much better product. So let's talk about the HD screen, why I think it's such a better product. Okay, we found this variety, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago. We started out with Egyptian wheat. When we started messing with screens, I didn't see any seed company. There was very few seed companies back then. There's dozens of them now. But I didn't see anybody messing with screens. And so we started planting this Egyptian wheat. We found it and trying to build some screens, trying to build a product, and we settled on Egyptian wheat. But the standability here in Upper Michigan, Northeastern Wisconsin, where we're testing it in 2 states, it wouldn't stand up through the winter. And we were told, well, try 25 pounds an acre. Well, that's way too much, because what happens is it's just like brassica. It's stunted, and Egyptian wheat is small to begin with. It's not very big, and we found that it was the size of a pencil. That's not going to hold up anything. What we were finding is it would freeze and die, like they all do, and then the first rainstorm in October would flatten it. So we knocked the seeding rate down to 10 pounds an acre and got a little bit bigger stalk, a little bit better standability, but still by rifle season in Wisconsin or Michigan, this stuff was flat on the ground, and we had to find something better, not only for our set, our personal hunting properties. A lot of our sets, our stand locations depended on screens to be standing into the first of the year, and we couldn't find anything. So I believe it was 2016, we tried 10 different varieties from multiple seed companies, and we got one to stay standing. We had a pretty rough December, a lot of snow, a lot of ice, freezing rain, really brutal conditions typical of December here in Upper Michigan. And we found this one variety did outstanding, and that's the one. Now we've since had some improvements to that variety to what we're selling right now, but what's in this bag of HD food plot screen is one single variety. We do not have to add any fluff or any stiffeners or anything like that to help it stand. This is the strongest sorghum that we have found for the screen. Now, talking about stiffeners, that seems to be something that's a lot of these new seed companies. Well, I've got, I've got this, and then I got a medium, and then I got a lower one. They act as a stiffener. It's kind of like building a building and blah, blah, blah. We don't have that because we got the strongest one already. They're just making poor seed choices with their taller varieties. And so they think by adding these shorter varieties, it's going to hold up. I'm going to show you a picture right now of our HD screen planted side by side. I believe it was 2018, 2019, with one of these blends that had the stiffeners in it, with the Milo and all that, 3 stories. And this is what happened. In the winter, but our screen is still standing, and that multiple height theory goes right out the window. Here's another one from late February. Again, they can't take the wind and the rain and the cold weather like our HD screen does. So just kind of keep that in mind. We're not just making this up. This isn't just opinion. We do probably more research than most of these companies combined, because not only, again, our sets that we have on our hunting properties, we have to have this working. And if I can get it to work up here, some of the most brutal conditions, I think we can get it to work anywhere. So when it comes to these screens, there's 3 very important points when it comes to our HD screen and success. One of the things you will not find in our HD screen: Milo, game sorghum, wild game sorghum, game food sorghum. It's all the same thing. It's that 4-foot tall plant that gets the great big seed head on it. Now, we talked a couple weeks ago in our soil building video how I really like Milo out in the food plot. That's where we're planting it here in Upper Michigan instead of corn, but we're also using it as a soil builder. It's a great soil builder. It is a horrible idea for a screen, okay? We work with over a dozen whitetail land managers, and there isn't one of them that I've seen of all their plans that recommend food in a screen. That makes absolute 0 sense. I mean, think about it, folks, okay? Where I'm standing right now used to be a food plot 6 years ago. And I'm looking at the highway right now, the road that goes by our house, and right 30 feet from me used to be one of our test areas that used to be screen. It would make absolutely 0 sense to have food butted up to the road that runs by our house, because the deer would be standing in the ditch, vulnerable to being shot, vulnerable to being hit by a car if they're eating Milo, grain sorghum. You can change the name all you want, but it's the same thing. It's a 4-foot high sorghum, and it doesn't do anything for holding up that 8-foot, 10-foot tall sorghum. But it is food, and that's not anything you want in a screen. That makes 0 sense. Ask any competent whitetail land manager. They'll agree with me. Another thing you will not find in our HD screen, because we've tried it for so long and it fell down multiple times and we just didn't want it anymore: sorghum Sudan grass. Most popular choice of seed for a lot of these other seed companies is sorghum Sudan grass. We found out a long time ago this does not work in the northern half of the country. When these cold weathers, snow, rain, ice all hit, this doesn't stay standing. It's one of the first things to fall down. We don't use Egyptian wheat in our HD screen. We do not use BMR sorghum. We don't use sugar sorghum. Those sorghums are cow food. That's not what you want in your food plot screen. Okay, we found out a long time ago what works, and we also found out, and we continue to use what actually can work in the winter and stay standing. Now, the biggest thing, we can't emphasize this enough. You have to follow the planting instructions. Each order with this screen comes with a half page of planting instructions. Planting dates, soil temperature, very important soil temperature. A lot of failures we saw because folks plant too early, soil's too cold, and the seed will not germinate. Planting depth, fertilization recommendation, weed control. I'm going to show you a picture of a screen right now. It looks really nice and tall, but look at the weeds. Very impressive height, poor weed control, and the funny thing is, check the screen out 2 months later, 3 months later. That screen looks terrible. Couple of reasons. It's planted too thin, and the screen itself is not wide enough. Okay, I can look at that and say that's about a 6 to 9 foot screen. And the funny thing is, these people were bad-mouthing our screen a couple of weeks ago saying you don't want to plant this. Well, yes, you do. If you follow the instructions and actually do some weed control, plant it at the right seed, the seed population at 8 pounds per acre, and plant it 15 feet wide instead of 6, you get a great screen. Check this picture out from late January. Can't see through it. Okay, that's our backyard after another snowstorm. Okay, I'm going to show you some videos. This video is kind of different than what we normally do, but I'm going to walk you through some photos and some videos of our HD screen. And one of the things, you know, when we're on social media, especially later in the year, a lot of people are asking about food plot screens, and and the pro staffers and the seed companies, they come on and check this out and look at this one, and here's Bob's border wall, and I saw one called Trump's wall. I've seen them all. Okay, we just call it the HD screen. But anyway, my point is this: everybody's screen looks cool in late August and September. I'll see hundreds of pictures. They all look great. It's not hard to do. But when you actually need that screen to stand, October, November, December, if you like to late season hunt, January in some of these states where you can late season hunt, that is when it's imperative to have the screen standing, okay? I've yet to see, I think we've seen one seed picture, one screen picture in hundreds of pictures. We always show the winter pictures because that's when it matters, the late season pictures, that's when it matters. All these other pro staffers and seed companies, I have not seen a winter picture yet. I've seen one. I take that back. I've seen one during a very mild Michigan winter like last year. So we have done our research because, to me, of all the products that we sell phenomenal products. This one is so important because if this goes wrong, it could make or break your season. Okay, and when we found out, when we were still testing these products back in 2011, 12, 13, and we had these sets, these stands on the food plots, and we had to hide them, folks, the season's over with before it even started because you cannot use that food plot to hunt. And that's what we found out, and that's why we're so determined to have a quality product with quality information, quality planning instructions. We want you to get it right. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say, I guarantee you're going to have, a bulletproof screen. Because if Mother Nature throws a 60 mile, 70 mile an hour wind at you with ice and rain and snow, things can happen, things can go wrong. I've seen it happen. I've seen our screen knocked down by a massive, massive rainstorm in July, but it popped right back up a week later. Okay, it happened to me personally. July, 4 or 5 years ago. Massive rainstorm came through and I was like, oh my God, this plot's going to be no good. The screen's gone. But talked to our sorghum breeder and he said, just have some patience. It'll pop right back up. And 2 weeks later, it was right back up. But what happens in October or November when you get a massive snowstorm? We've had them here in October. We've had major snowstorms and it will take the screen down. There's a vulnerability period from when the screen is still green, but we're getting freezing temperatures and it's starting to turn brown. I think that's when the screen is the most vulnerable. Ours is anyway. But what we're looking for is a 14-foot screen, 12-foot screen, and I've seen 20-foot screens with our product, and it looks impressive, and I tell the folks that looks great, but I still want it to be 10 feet, when that top comes down. But we're looking for 12 to 14 feet, and then a couple of killing frosts to kill it, and then the first rain event, a little bit of wind, it takes that top 2 feet that, we're too far north to put a viable seed head on, but it starts to tassel. All right, I want that to come down, come off, whether it falls to the ground or it just is hanging there. That snow catch is now gone, and I think you're going to be just fine. But I've seen pictures of miscanthus on the ground. I've seen pictures, trees uprooted. This is one of my favorite pictures of all times. This pine tree blown over in the wind, right into HD screen, and the screen's still standing. We found a great product, okay, but again, it's an annual some of these massive fall storms, winter storms may not, leave this unharmed. Could it fall down? It's possible. But we've done our due diligence on seed selection, planting instructions. We're still working with Brad Harper Growing Solutions, on a liquid to make this even stronger. We're hoping to have something by before this fall. But we had, I think it was early March, late February, we had a massive storm up here. We were out of power for 3 days. Storm hit late at night, started with freezing rain in the afternoon, 50, 60 mile an hour winds. We had crews from all over the Midwest here trying to restore power. Well, I woke up the next morning to, 8, 10 inches of wet, heavy snow. There were trees down everywhere. I could look and see power lines down. I looked out our back window, our screen was still standing. Now it got beaten up pretty bad. You could see through it, the leaves are down, but the stalks were still there. So we've chosen the right seed, the right product. And if you follow the instructions, odds are you'll have a very good screen. So I want to walk you through a couple of pictures of what we see from our customers. I'm not going to show you September pictures because those, like I said, those are easy to get. I want to show you some winter pictures. To me, that's the most important time to have these screens standing. Rifle season, especially if you're late season, because obviously you'll have a great screen when it's still green and growing. But here in Michigan, November 15th, I need that screen to stand. December 1st, first Friday in December, our muzzleloader season starts. I need that screen to be standing because they're back on the food plots. So I need it to work not only for us, but I need it to work for our customers as well. And like I said before, if I can get it to work here in Upper Michigan, one of our partners, Jake Blow in Minnesota, if he can get it to work in Northwest Minnesota, we feel that we can get it to work anywhere else in the country. So that's screening, folks. If you're looking for the best screening products here, we've got them here on the shelf at Northwoods. We're out of Tecumseh for the year, RC Tecumseh. We won't have any more till December. We're very low on RC Chippewa. We've got plenty of RC Bedrock. We've got plenty of the screen, HD screen. Now here in Michigan, I'm still cold temperatures. It's, I believe, May 28th. No. Yeah, May 28th. Okay, sorry. May 28th, it's still too cold. We just started spraying. It's too cold to plant here. I'm not going to plant probably till mid-June. So there's plenty of time to buy it. We've got plenty in stock. Hopefully this helps you learn things. You learn what to avoid. Okay, we don't want food in our screen. We don't want cow food in our screen. We found out a long time ago that that does not work. Follow our instructions. Don't worry about what you see on social media because honestly, 10 out of 10 times it's going to usually be wrong. Might be one time here or there, but I've seen too many people recommend the wrong fertilization, wrong planting methods. We send instructions for a reason. I don't care what anyone else is doing. Follow our instructions and you should have a great screen. Thanks for watching, folks. Thanks for helping the channel grow. Remember, we've got Field of Greens podcast. That's up. We're up to episode 4 now. You can find that on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for helping Northwoods Whitetails have the absolute best start to a year we've ever had. We're so thankful, so blessed. We'll talk to you all in a few days.